Thank you, Nitinji, and thank you, Taru, for giving this opportunity. And I would be happy for any question answer in question answer session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alok sir, for your wonderful insight. And we have really seen how you can make some deprived community to be a privileged and powerful community. Audience, we will take a question and answer after the session, after the Aindrila G's session. So now I would request Aindrila G to please start.
I'm audible, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So good evening to everyone, and thank you, Dr. Chetna, Anya, Nitin, for your kind introduction and for giving me this opportunity to talk about this very relevant topic. I consider myself a lifelong student. I am a student at present, an FPM scholar at ISB, and very much a learner in this journey as all of you. And I would also like to thank my co-speaker, Mr. Alok Shukla ji, for a wonderful session and for giving live example of some of the points that I plan to talk about as a part of my session. So Dr. Chetna, if you can please show the PPT, maybe the list of topics that I plan to cover. Yeah, then the next slide, please. Yeah. So the rural economy and its importance, I think this importance was shown to us very recently in a rather jarring manner, I would say, during the COVID crisis. The plight of our 120 million migrant labor was there in the headlines every day and even now. So had our villages had a thriving economy, these people would not have had to leave their villages to other places in search of livelihood. So the importance of rural economy had been highlighted by Mahatma Gandhi when he had said that the heart of India is villages. And to be able to have a healthy body, we need to take care of the heart. Much later, late Professor C.K. Prahlad had shown the world about the fortune at the bottom of the pyramid. But many people feel that, the villagers should get a part of the fortune by participating in the economy. Again, a quote from Mahatma Gandhi, he had said that the real solution to the problem of this country is production by its masses and not necessarily mass production. So what do we mean by the rural economy and the rural population? So in our country, about 60.5% of the land territory is considered as rural, and close to 66% of the population is considered as rural. In comparison, in US, it is 97% of the land area and 20% of the population which is considered as rural. And in the European Union, it is 57% of the land area and 24% of the population which is considered as rural. So India is potentially and it's predominantly a rural economy, and it contributes to more than 46% of the national income. Chetna, I'll come to this slide later. I'll let you know when to come to this slide. So now, as per a Niti Aayog report in 2007, while traditionally agriculture was the main sector, there were some profound changes that have happened in the rural economy. So now at present, 2/3 of the rural income is generated from non-agricultural activities. And more than half of the value added in the manufacturing sector in India is contributed by rural areas. However, this has not led to any significant gains in employment or in any improvement in worker productivity. In addition, what has happened is there has been a steady transition to urban areas from the village for better economic opportunities. And there has been a female withdrawal from labor force, which has happened across all types of households in the rural areas. Now, given this problem, what can be done to improve the economic development in rural areas? And one of the potential mechanisms is what we call as rural entrepreneurship. Now, Shuklaji's example was a live case of that. But there are some other models also, but I will also discuss it at a little generic level, some of the pros and cons of rural entrepreneurship and some challenges and opportunities. So we know that the father of entrepreneurship is considered as a person called Joseph Schumpeter, who in his 1934 book, The Theory of Economic Development, he said that entrepreneurship is the primary engine of economic development. And when entrepreneurship happens in a rural context, that becomes known as rural entrepreneurship. And the Nobel laureate from Bangladesh, Professor Muhammad Yunus, in context of the villagers, he had said that villagers are natural entrepreneurs. because for them, the business activities are a matter of survival. There are certain sectors which are amenable for rural entrepreneurship, like agro-based, like food, fruits and vegetable processing, forest-based, mineral-based, engineering, like agri-machinery, textile-based, handicrafts, financial services, herbal health, fashion, beauty, career counseling, etc. And in terms of the different types of rural entrepreneurship, we could have individual entrepreneurship, we could have group entrepreneurship, cluster formation, as well as cooperatives. Now, before segueing into women rural entrepreneurship, I just wanted to give a perspective on the gender divide in our country, as well as where we stand globally. So the World Economic Forum, it publishes a gender gap report every year. It started from 2006. In 2020, the report considered 153 countries and on 4 parameters, which are health, education, economic participation, and political empowerment. Now, globally, it is seen that political empowerment is the area with the largest gender gap, where only 24.7% gap has been closed, followed by economic participation, where only 57.8% of the gap has been closed. In both health and education, the situation is slightly better because both have achieved more than 95% of gender parity. The next slide, please. Now, where does India stand compared to the globe? Can we have the next slide, Dr. Chetna? Yeah. So I've basically compared India with 4 other countries, with Iceland, which is at number 1 in terms of gender parity. Yemen, which you see is the last, it is number 153. We have USA somewhere in 53, and India is at 112. Now, I will not focus so much on health and education, but if you look at the other 2, which is economic participation and political empowerment, in political empowerment, we are ahead of many other countries. We are at number 18, and we have achieved about 41.1% parity. But if you look at economic participation, we are at 149, and we just have about 35.4% gender parity. What is more important to note is that if you see the table below, there it is a comparison of the scores between 2006 and 2020. And here we see that, we have kind of declined. We were 102 to start with, now we are at 112. No, sorry, we were at 110, now we are at 149. We were at 39.7, and now we are at only 35.4% parity. Some other important things to note is that among all the countries studied, India is the only country where the economic gender gap is larger than the political gender gap. Only 25% of the women compared to 82% of the men engage actively in the labor market, which is one of the poorest in the world. Female estimated earned income is near 1/5 of the male income, which is also one of the poorest in the world. And as we have heard earlier also, women account for about 14% of entrepreneurship. They also account for 14% of leadership roles and 30% of professional and technical workers. Now, there is another report, the MasterCard Index of Women Entrepreneurs, 2018, which ranked India 52 out of 57 surveyed countries in their index of women entrepreneurs. Now, my point of giving these figures is that, we should keep the numbers at the backdrop when we are discussing about women rural entrepreneurship. There is a long way to go, certainly. And we should also remember that, rural women entrepreneurship cannot be a magic pill that it will reduce all kind of gender gap in one shot. Very, very important economic lever. So if we can go to the next slide. So what are some of the challenges and opportunities of rural entrepreneurship? If we can go to the next slide, please. So, some of these challenges, they apply to rural entrepreneurship in general. And there are some which apply much more to the women rural entrepreneurs. And some of these, Shuklaji also kind of mentioned. So we have lack of infrastructure, poor connectivity, limited access to education and health. We have marketing issues, language barrier, because we are a nation of so many languages. We have legal institutions which tend to be a little slow. We have low risk propensity because generally our rural entrepreneurs do not have very deep pockets, so they can't take risks. We have low literacy rate, of course, childcare, family ties, and responsibility, which is kind of a barrier for women. We have a male-dominated society, a lot of unconscious gender bias, lack of confidence in business skills, access to finance, networks and relationships, family support or the lack of it, safety in work in public areas. Again, this can be a big hindrance for women to come out of their homes. And we also have exploitation of middlemen. But of course, not everything is grim. There are a lot of opportunities also that rural entrepreneurship has. Things like, the low establishment cost, availability of low cost labor, which also reduces the total cost of production. There are a lot of government policies and subsidies which are available for rural entrepreneurs, and some particularly for women rural entrepreneurs, which they can avail of. Another big thing is the availability of the internet and mobile phones in remote areas, because some business models, are totally dependent on this internet connectivity. And the other thing to note is that most of the businesses of the female rural entrepreneurs, they are at the micro level. So there is tremendous opportunity to scale them up to the small and medium, that kind of a range. Now we will come to the contribution of female rural entrepreneurship to the economy. There are a lot of research papers also which talk about it. And in Europe, rural entrepreneurship is being considered as a path for endogenous development. Successful rural women entrepreneurs shine in two aspects of their lives, society and family. And as Shuklaji was talking about the Usha case, I was just thinking that, yes, how true it can be. Then entrepreneurship development among rural women helps them to enhance their personal capabilities, they enhance their decision-making capability, and they also increase their status in not only their family, but also in the society. And there was a survey which was done in 2010, which showed that 66% of the women rural entrepreneurs could also increase their personal asset. Now, there are broadly two ways in which rural entrepreneurship can actually help in developing the rural economy. One is the economic contribution, and the other is the social contribution. Presently, 70% of the micro enterprises are run by rural women. However, it drops as one moves up to the small and medium scale industries. Now, in terms of economic contribution, it is mainly poverty reduction. So rural entrepreneurship can help in capital formation. It can improvement in per capita income. Sometimes they scale up and they can also export things, which helps them in earning foreign exchange and employment generation. Now, why I have put a double star here is that, this is particularly relevant in case of female rural entrepreneurs, which we also saw in the Usha story. And there was like Goldman Sachs, as a part of their CSR initiative, had run a worldwide program called 10,000 Women. This was not essentially on rural women entrepreneurs, but generally women entrepreneurs. And they had imparted free education, business education to all these 10,000 women entrepreneurs. And their criteria and their main reason for selecting women entrepreneurs is that they had seen that, women are employment generators. And they had also tracked this project, and they had seen a huge increase in generation of employment by these women entrepreneurs. In the terms of social contribution, I think it can result in a balanced regional development. It can lead to a lot of innovation. It can reduce some disparity between urban and rural areas. It can reduce male and female income disparity. Of course, we have to keep the numbers in the background, disparity to some extent, yes. It can improve the standard of living at a family level, maybe a better life for the girl child. And of course, we saw in the earlier presentation how that is already becoming a reality. And as Shuklaji was also mentioning, and I've also noted, it can actually bring about a culture change in our society. Be it the brother-in-law making tea, be it the sasuma cooking. So all these things, the moment the woman becomes an earning member, her confidence increases, her decision-making increases, and the society and the family also look up to her. She can become actually a role model for for her daughters, for even her daughters-in-law. So gradually, this can also lead to a huge change in culture in our society. I also thought I will share some examples of women rural entrepreneurs. Now, sadly, if you Google this, you will find only about 5-6 examples. I'm sure there are more. It's just that they need more publicity. So we have Ela Bhatt, who founded the Seva or the Self-Employed Women Association, which has gone a long way in generating employment among rural women. We have Tinlas Chirol, who's a social entrepreneur from Ladakh. She founded the Ladakhi Women's Travel Company and has written articles and blogs. We have Annie George, who's the founder of Bedrock, which helps in disaster management in coastal communities. We have Chetna Sinha, who's the founder of Man Desi Bank, which is a regulated cooperative bank which is run by women and for the women. We have our very own household name, the Shri Mahila Griha Udyog Lijjat Papad. So they do a lot of consumer goods and they generate self-employment. In my personal capacity, I know Mrs. Chandana Khan, who's the ex-principal secretary, tourism of Undivided AP. And she has founded an organization called Margin to Mainstream. What this organization has done is it has adopted villages in Shantiniketan in West Bengal, and they are promoting the handicrafts of tribal women there. Now, I thought it would be interesting to know, whether there are any differences between men and women entrepreneurs. So that if, as things are institutionalized, if rural entrepreneurship, the kind of focus it is getting now, whether it will benefit men and women equally. Now, as it happens, and research has shown that there are differences between men and women entrepreneurs. So what are some of these differences? It is seen that men are more likely to pursue goals of economic value creation, whereas women focus more on social and environmental value creation. Women are likely to pursue social entrepreneurship more than men, who are more inclined to engage in traditional forms of entrepreneurship. In fact, when we talk about social entrepreneurship, we see that the gender gap actually reduces. It is the altruistic nature of women and the fact that they can be affiliated with a social group. These are the main reasons for women taking up social entrepreneurship. Men and women also differ in terms of their entrepreneurial characteristics, in their financial decision making, in their credibility or lack of it in the eyes of the financiers, in the size of business in terms of sales, assets, number of employees. Usually businesses run by women entrepreneurs are found to be smaller compared to men. They also differ in their ambition for growth and expansion, or that is how the perception is. So women are known to have lesser ambition for growing their business. And the other area of difference is that, women tend to take less risk than men. So essentially, women are more risk averse than men are. Now, knowing all of these, what is it that can be done to encourage women rural entrepreneurs? I think the first and foremost is that equal access to education, health, and nutrition should be provided. One should encourage women to join the workforce, because what happens is when they join the workforce, they come in contact with other people, they get exposed to different technology. That can also give them new business ideas, and they can then turn into entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurial training and mentoring is very important, which we have seen in Usha's case also, and there are many organizations which are actually specializing in this. They should be made aware about the conscious and unconscious biases which people have, or which Indian society has, so that when they are going out for their business, they know how to deal with it. Better access to financial networks. There are many organizations such as Niti Aayog's Women Entrepreneurship Platform, Catalyst for Women Entrepreneurship, which are there to support these rural female entrepreneurs in terms of financial help. Safety is a very important thing, because I think without that, it would be very difficult to, for the girls to come out of their houses and run their own business. Support from families and social circles to pursue their entrepreneurial ambitions, and we saw that that is gradually happening. One thing based on the differences in the nature of women, I think women can be encouraged to become social entrepreneurs. And social entrepreneurship doesn't essentially mean that they have to be non-profits. There can be for-profit social entrepreneurs as well, which focus on financial return as well as social return. In fact, like venture capitalists, there is this huge community of impact investors who are ready to invest in these kind of businesses. The only thing they would want is they would want financial return as well as social return. So I think that women will do very well if they run these kind of enterprises. And the other thing is that because we saw that our political gender gap is much reduced, I think we should take use of this political influence and change policies supporting rural entrepreneurship by women. It is happening in bits and pieces, but I think a lot more can be done and it has to be done. So I would like to conclude by giving another example, another model of female rural entrepreneurship, which I happen to know. So there is this organization which is called this Digital Empowerment Foundation. They are based out of Delhi, and their main aim is to reduce poverty by reducing digital divide. So they have a model called Suchnapreneurship, or which is also called as information entrepreneurship. So we know that the government has a lot of schemes for the poor, for the villagers, but a lot of times what happens is the villagers do not know that these schemes are there, or even if they know, for them to go to the panchayat and or the nearest CSC center and go and apply, that means that that is a loss of their daily wage, because of which they often don't go. So what DEF is done is that it has, it has picked up some entrepreneurs in every village, and it has given them training. It has given them digital equipment like mobile phones, laptop computers, cameras, Xerox machines, etc. And they have been asked to set their own shop. So the purpose is that they have to go from door to door. They have to make people aware of the different schemes that are there. And whoever is eligible, they will help people apply for the schemes. They will do all the running, do all the paperwork. In the process, they will take some service fee, which is a source of earning for them. Not only that, now because they have at their disposal all the digital equipment, they can use those equipment entrepreneurially also and earn their own living. So for example, they can provide digital training. They can, for example, maybe they can do some video recording. So, and this entire income is their own. So like Usha, DEF also doesn't take anything. This is not like a franchisee or anything. So the entire income is for the entrepreneurs to keep. And when they found this model to be very successful, as a part of phase 2, they focused on recruiting only female entrepreneurs. So now they have more than 100 female entrepreneurs in some of the very remote districts in the states of MP, Rajasthan, and UP, where these female Suchnapreneurs are running. And like in the Usha case, these women also, they scaled up during the COVID crisis, and they have been distributing masks and ration and all that. The other initiative that the same organization is doing is basically called as GOAL, or Going Online as Leaders. So this is also a digitally enabled program where what they are doing is, they have picked up some girls from tribal communities who are, number one, being trained by the female entrepreneurs, the Suchnapreneurs in the villages. Digital training is being imparted. In addition, so 5 of these girls have been given one mentor. And the mentor is actually an urban successful lady. So they have fortnightly meetings over webinars and telecons, and they can discuss anything under the sun. So these people, the tribal girls, they talk about their aspirations, about their ambitions, and wherever possible, the mentors as well as DEF has been helping them. So this is a fairly young project that is run only for, I think, 6 to 8 months. But already it is, the Ministry of Tribal Welfare is very interested in picking up this project and scaling up it at a national level. And I'm sure there are many other examples which are there, which we can all proudly talk of. So I would like to conclude by saying that, I think this women rural entrepreneurship, it should become like a social movement. So we have seen that any kind of a movement is usually triggered by some kind of a social or a political event. So be it Quit India, be it Swadeshi, be it the huge uprising that happened after the Nirbhaya case, what is happening in US now. So I think that the migrant labor crisis should be a trigger for this. And each of us, should participate in this movement in whatever capacity we can, be it as a trainer, be it as a mentor, be it as a researcher, a funder or donor. Because if this scales up, then, I think it is definitely this rural entrepreneurship or women rural entrepreneurship is definitely going to impact the socio-economic development in India. And I would like to end with this. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aindrila ji. And thank you so much, Alok sir. Now, without any wastage of time, we'll start with our question and answer round. So we have one question from Ananta Sai Lakshmi, and she wants to know that can we have different ways of empowering women apart from entrepreneurship, is there any other way also that we can empower women?
If I can take it, so what we came to know from Goal is that, the Goal, the tribal program that I spoke of. So there are some women who wanted to become entrepreneurs, but there were others who wanted to become teachers. There were others who wanted to become fashion designers. And what this organization did is, in their capacity, so they could directly help the women who wanted to become entrepreneurs, but for the others, what they did is they could open channels. So if it is teachers, then they could talk about the kind of education one had to take, what kind of basically the kind of exams that one had to give for a teacher, and they could facilitate that. For the designers, one of the mentor herself was a designer, so she could kind of help these people. So from my experience, these are the two things that I know of. But yes, coming to think of it, I mean, there